Welcome back to Mortal Kombat 11 for Dummies. If you've enjoyed the previous episodes, please consider giving us a subscription here. Of course, we're doing a lot of Mortal Kombat stuff right now because it's new and I'm really enjoying the game. But we have other stuff going on as well. Today, we're going to be talking about what your control scheme should be in MK11. This is probably the most requested discussion point. When I put out feedback in the previous videos, this is really what people wanted me to talk about. I think these questions make sense. Mortal Kombat 11 definitely has more buttons than many other games do. It has a block button, of course, which is a really big part of it, and that's something that's rare in 2D fighting games. But even when you think about 3D fighting games, they have block buttons. MK still has more buttons than those games. So I think this question makes a lot of sense. The most immediate thing to tackle is, which device do you use? Should you use stick or should you use pad? The best answer to this is always whichever one you are most comfortable with. You don't need to switch things up. If you're somebody who's been playing stick for a while in other fighting games, yeah, not much reason to switch. If you're somebody who's been playing pad in other fighting games, again, not much reason to switch. If you're somebody who's new to fighting games, you don't need to go out and pick up some big fancy stick. It's not necessary. I know people who succeed at MK doing both. I know some people who play stick in other fighting games, pad for this, and vice versa. It's really just what you are most comfortable with. So here's my stick. I guess it's not exactly a stick, but it is a hitbox style layout that you can split in the middle. These two halves separate, so I call it a split box. I've shown it on the channel before. You can check out that video if you'd like. The way I do it is just the default control scheme. Some of these other options I'll show in a little bit, but as far as the button layout goes, I just use the default myself. This is 1, 2, 3, 4. That is to say, front punch, front kick, back kick. Then you have interactable. Then there's the block button right here. Then the throw button is right here. And then lastly, you have stance switch out here at the end. I like this, maybe in part because I've just been playing since MK9, so it feels comfortable. And again, comfort is the biggest thing here. So for me, it feels cool. But on top of that, I think it makes sense in other ways. In this layout, I have fastest access to my attacks. They're just these four right here. And this is where my two major button pressing fingers are, right? The pointer in the middle. On top of that, my ring is always on block. Like, this is just the default position for the way that my hand likes to go. The next most common layout that I've seen on stick is what you currently see on the screen up here. So what this does is basically move the attack buttons from these four to these four. Let me show you what this looks like from your perspective. So this is interactable, block, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think this layout makes a lot of sense if you are somebody who has a stick that has 30mm size buttons, which are the standard in most sticks. You can see they are bigger than the 24mm buttons that are typically used on a hitbox layout. So for these, I think this layout makes a lot of sense because block becomes where your thumb is. And that's very easy to access. At the same time, you can still very easily access all of the attacks. Super easy to do. And interactable is right here. If you're somebody who prefers pad, then there's a couple of layouts I can recommend for you. I do think that the default control layout makes a lot of sense for pad. From your perspective, this is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4. Then in the back, you have on the same side as the buttons, you have interactables right here. Block is right here. Then on the opposite side, you have throw, and then stance switch. The other main way that I've seen people use pad is with a very slightly different layout. So you have basically just swapped the sides of the top buttons. You now have block here and interactable here, and the other two are now here. Why would you do that, you ask? Well, because this is the style that I've seen people use if they like to play claw. What's called claw style on pad, which means that you have your hand in this position, so you can easily access, again, 1, 2, 3, 4. If this was what makes sense for you, then this means that you can't really access these two buttons very well. Instead, you've put them up here. And finally, let's talk about the options in the menu here. Input window timing, to begin with, is about how long you want to have in which to input a special move and for it to still register with the game. Long is not commonly used. That is because, there's just it's a big enough window that it can come with errors sometimes. So say that you're Cetrion and you have a back forward 2 special move, and you also have a forward 2 string starter, and you're trying to walk backwards and then immediately do your forward 2 string. Okay? There's a little window in there where you can sometimes get your back forward 2 special rather than just your forward moving string. So people will usually not use long. The question is whether you use medium or short. For me, I like medium because I don't have the greatest execution, so I'd rather have a bigger window. And on top of that, there are some option selects that I think work better in medium. They do work in short, but a little bit tougher to do. So if you're somebody who wants to minimize errors, absolutely, then short might be good. If you're somebody who, like me, is kind of error prone, but you don't want the long, medium's the way to go. The second one here, there's really no debate. You do need to have Crushing Blows held check on. This means that you get the choice of whether to decide to do a Crushing Blow or not. Without it, you will always get the Crushing Blow if the condition is met, but that's not ideal for actual play because sometimes, like in this situation, say this is the end of round 1, you'd rather not waste a Crushing Blow, which is only available once per game, in a situation where any hit would have killed anyway. It's really a waste at that point. Next, we have a release check, which is called negative edge in other games. That is to say, the game with this on will not just do special moves when you press down a button, but also when you let go of the button. So it's checking the release of the button as well as the depression of the button. In NRS games, this is usually turned off. In other games, you do rely on negative edge for some things, but in this game, in this series, for whatever reason, negative edge has tended to cause problems in execution more than it's actually helped. I don't really know what the differences are that make that more plausible in this game, but that's how it is, so I recommend turning release check off. Alternate controls changes the actual input motions. So let's check out Cetrion here. She has these down back, or you have a back forward in here at some point. There it is. But if you have alternate controls on, this changes and they become half circle forward or down forward. This is if you're just accustomed to these motions. If you've come to this game for the first time from some other game where these other motions are more common, maybe this makes you feel more at home. I personally recommend not having this on because that extra time that it takes to do back, down, forward is just a little extra couple of frames that you could have spent just having a special move out. That's not going to matter all the time, but there are definitely marginal cases where the speed of the regular inputs I do think is better. I do think it's better to just learn a back forward input, even if that feels unusual to you, compared to having half circle forward or half circle back on instead. Input shortcuts is useful if you're somebody who isn't that great at execution. So personally, I like having it on. If you are somebody who is more precise in your inputs than I am, then input shortcuts off might make more sense. But my personal way to play is with them on. And finally, let's talk about button shortcuts, which is actually the opposite of what you might think. So in this game, throws are bound to one button, and if you'd like, you can have the option to use 2 buttons as a combination instead. In other games, right, it's the opposite. Throw is this, or whatever combination. And if you want to, you can also do a macro button of throw. But for Mortal Kombat, if you turn off button shortcuts, this means that you still do throw with this button, but you can no longer do it with this. If you're somebody who only plays with the 6-button layout, like the stick I was showing before, then you need to have this on because it's your only way to do a throw or to do the 2-kick stance switch. So here's my personal control scheme. Being comfortable is the most important part. If you're comfortable, then you are more likely to press the button that you want at the time when you need to press it, and that's the name of the game. Let me know if there's anything else you'd like me to cover. My current plans are to discuss defense and blocking and the neutral game, but again, if there's something you'd rather me discuss instead, just let me know. hit the subscribe, please, and we will see you next time.